All right, guys, Jeremy Knopf here with another episode of the Public Relations Declassified Livestream. So today we've got a few interesting topics to talk about. We're going to go ahead and jump right into the first one. This is something that I recently went through some interesting things with a client who was having a little bit of an issue here, and discovered some new things about this topic that I had not known before. So what we're going to talk about in this segment is 4 ways to get a defamatory website taken down. Now, a little bit of context here. We were helping a client to bring awareness to a particular con artist who's out there in the world stealing money from people, and put up a website about that. And basically it told the whole story about what had happened. It told the whole story about multiple court cases against this particular con artist. And she actually managed to get that website taken down several times, actually get the whole hosting account completely nuked. I've never seen that happen before. We did a little bit of investigation, did some digging into how it happened, and figured out what she had done to get that taken down. But in this case, it was not defamatory. It was simply sharing the story of what had happened. But a lot of times you do see legitimately defamatory websites go up. If you're prominent, if you're well known in your industry, if you're someone who is considered a public figure, a lot of times you are going to attract the haters, the trolls, the people who want to try and tear you down so they can feel better about themselves, or so that they can try and create some exposure, some awareness for them by being the person who's coming out and attacking you. Happens all the time. Usually what I see happen is as you start to become more prominent, people want to try and leverage that to their benefit, to kind of ride on your coattails by trying to attack you and coming off as supposedly someone who's, fighting for the little guy or things like that. So I do see this happen a lot. So there's a few different ways if somebody puts up a website about you that you may be able to get it taken down. Now, one of the first ways to do this is, of course, having your name trademarked. And that is not a thing you should try to do yourself. As I'm talking about this aspect, I think I probably should bring on my friend Angela, who's a trademark attorney, at some point, and have her talk about this particular aspect more in depth and kind of break it down from a legal perspective. But if you get a trademark on your personal name, that prevents people from, well, it doesn't prevent them from doing it, but it gives you legal grounds to get it taken down. If somebody puts up a website with your name in the domain. So this is really important, because once you've got that trademark, nobody can use your name in a domain name. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't say your name. It doesn't mean that they can't use your name in an article or in a video or anything like that. But it does mean they can't put up a website with your name as part of the domain. And that's really important, because those tend to rank very well. So if you've got this trademark, you now have the legal grounds, and you don't even have to go to court for this. You have the legal grounds to demand that a host takes that website down entirely. So I'm a big fan of being proactive, big fan of really setting yourself up in kind of a fortress, so to speak. And having a trademark on your name is a really good way to do that. So we'll bring Angela Langlotz on at some point to talk a little bit more about this. I will, for now, say that's not a thing that you do yourself. I did my own trademark on something unrelated to my name a while back. And, I know a fair amount about that type of thing. But once I got a chance to get a little bit further in the process, and the patent office was like, no, this does not work. I asked Angela to take a look at my initial trademark application, and she identified about a dozen things that I had done wrong. So yes, you could use like a LegalZoom or, something like that and set up a trademark, but you're probably going to get it wrong. And if you get it wrong, it will not be defensible. So I do advise you set up a trademark. It really puts you in a lot stronger position right from the word go. Okay. Another way that you can potentially get a defamatory website about you taken down is to use what's called a DMCA request. This is essentially the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And this means that if somebody is using your copyrighted materials, images, text, graphics, things like that, videos, then you can have the host take that website down. Now, you don't have to go through a special process to copyright any of your work. If it's your photo, if it's your video, if it's your text, you should be able to point to where it originated from and show that you are the copyright holder. And just by the mere fact of creating it, you are the copyright holder. You don't have to file anything with the patent office, with the trademark folks, none of that, or copyright rather. It's automatically assigned copyright just from the fact that you created it. Okay, so if they have used your photos, your graphics, your videos, your text, your podcasts, depending on how they've used them, and in most cases, you should be able to get any instances of somebody using your copyrighted materials, you should be able to leverage that to get a website taken down. Now, the way that you'll do this is you will go and you will look up where that website is hosted. Whois.com is a great website to do this. It will tell you where the name servers are, and that will then tell you where the website's hosted. Every single host in the US has to comply with DMCA requests, right? This is federal law. And in fact, most other countries do as well. So what you'll do is you'll go to the hosting company. You'll find, typically they'll have a form or a specific email that you will send a message to basically give them all the information about this DMCA request. The process is pretty straightforward. They're just going to ask for certain information proving that it's your material that's being used. And if that turns out to be the case, and it does not fall under a very narrow window of what's called fair use, then they will have that website taken down. There's literally zero gray area here. All right. But there are some cases where fair use may apply here, and then they can still use them. Or if they host their website in a country that doesn't really give a shit about DMCA or American law in general, you may have a harder time there. But the process is pretty straightforward. Most people are going to host in the US, so use that to your advantage. All right. Another one that I recently uncovered, because this particular lady kept getting the client's website taken down, which was exposing this con artist, is a simple legal threat. And apparently it doesn't even have to come from a law firm. So a little bit of context here. Most hosting companies run on kind of a commoditized model. And what I mean by that is they're charging very, very, very cheap prices, right? There's hosting companies that are like $3 a month. You know, I would say the upper end of the low end is somewhere in the maybe $20, $25 a month range, right? So even there, that's still pretty damn commoditized, right? My hosting company is a bit more. We pay for much more robust servers. So I think we're somewhere around 100, 120 bucks a month, something like that. But most hosts on the cheaper end, if somebody sends them a legal threat, right? That if you don't take this down, I'm going to sue you for defamation, for slander, whatever. Most hosts, rather than look into who's right and who's wrong, or if there's any grounds or anything like that, they'll just nuke the account. And we learned this when she made the same baseless threat at 3 different hosts, and every one of those hosting accounts got nuked. So I will tell you there is a workaround for this, depending on which side of the equation you're on. Our client ended up putting up servers over in China, which they're not going to fold to the baseless threats. Now, if there's a court order, of course, they would take it down. But in the meantime, it's not going anywhere. It's there to stay. That is a tactic that will only work with hosts in the US or some hosts in, maybe Europe or places like that. But in general, this should work to get a defamatory website taken down. Now, if it is actually defamatory and you can prove that in court, even better, right? A court order will definitely get it taken down. But I surprisingly learned that apparently you can do this even with no grounds, and it will often work. So the fourth way to get a website taken down, a defamatory website taken down, is definitely not something I would recommend for most people. But you've got the black side of things, right? The hacking, the DDoS attacks, the things like that. And there may be cases where this might be a good angle for you, depending on, how much damage a particular website is doing to your brand, or if they have it hosted in a jurisdiction where they're not going to oblige, any of the U.S. law. They're not going to follow DMCA. They're not going to follow court orders, anything like that. Then you may find yourself in a position where you have to leverage, let's call them less than ethical means to get a website taken down. That is not something that is my area of expertise. Good friend of mine who I think we've had on the live stream a few times before, Bob McIntosh, I think would actually be a great person to talk about this. He's a great guy when it comes to digital marketing, but prior to that, he actually had a career in what's called ethical hacking, where he would be hired by companies to go in and try and hack into their systems, try to find vulnerabilities, try and exploit the system to find where they're weak and what needs to be improved. So if that's a topic that you guys would be interested in hearing a little bit more about, purely in a hypothetical sense, because of course, none of us would ever do anything that is not 100% legal, right? But if you would like to hear more about that, kind of how it works and how some people execute that, or find the people to execute that in a purely hypothetical and educational environment, let me know. Just drop us a comment or drop something in the chat if you'd like me to bring Bob on to talk about that. I think it'd be a great topic, lots of fun, and it definitely gets us kind of thinking outside the box in ways that might apply outside of this as well, right? Ways that might give us other ideas into other kind of unique approaches to solving particular problems. So if you'd like me to bring Bob on sometime and have him talk about that particular aspect, just drop a comment, whether you're watching with us right now in the Facebook group or on X or YouTube or wherever. Just drop us a comment. Let me know if you want me to bring Bob on, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to come on and we can talk about all that cool shit that most people have no exposure to. All right, so that being said, those were 4 really solid ways to get down a website that is defaming you. I will say in a lot of cases, sometimes even if it's true, even if it's not defamation, even if it is true, you may want to use these tactics to get it taken down anyway. Still, of course, work to fix the problem, whatever that may be, and do your best not to get into these situations, but you still need to protect your brand either way. So take advantage of these tactics if you ever run into this situation, because they all are fairly effective. And what I have found is often if you throw enough at the problem, usually the people will go away. So if you keep getting the website knocked down, taken offline, they're probably going to get tired of it after a while, because that's time, that's money, that's effort that they're spending, and there's no financial reward for that. So eventually most people will get tired of it. So if you can get it taken down a few times, there's a good chance that it stays down. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about a story that I've been covering for a while, and that is Blake Lively's PR crisis, which has now gotten a lot worse. Now, if you guys follow me on X, you know I've been covering this for a while. For those of you who do not know the story, you're not familiar with kind of what went down, how it's all unfolded, give you a quick rundown here. So basically, Blake Lively started by making an accusation of sexual harassment, which clearly turned out to be false. Then she leveraged the media with a New York Times story that she got placed specifically to discredit Justin Baldoni. Now, while they're fighting in court, she's out here leveraging the media. Can't fault her for that. Brilliant strategy. That's exactly what I would advise any client to do. Fight them in court, but also fight them in the court of public opinion, so to speak. So obviously she was in the wrong 100% of the time, but strategically she was making the right moves from that perspective. All right. As the timeline started to come out, more information was released. In fact, Justin Baldoni actually launched a website that had an entire timeline of every single piece of information related to this. And then, of course, more and more evidence started coming out from there. For example, there was a video where on the set where she claimed he supposedly sexually harassed her, she didn't realize that they were actually shooting that. It wasn't just, they weren't just practicing. There was actually video of it, which completely refuted everything that she claimed, right? This girl is an absolute narcissist and toxic to an unbelievable level. So she's basically trying to destroy anyone who kind of gets in her way. Things started to go pretty south when other people started coming out, sharing their experiences with her, talking about what kind of person she really is. And it got so bad that she actually hired a former CIA officer to manage her PR crisis. And that really didn't do her any favors because, it really makes you look a lot more guilty when you're hiring former spies to try and rehab your image, right? That's just not a good look. Now, since this is all unfolded, public opinion of her has completely shifted. And more recently, and I talked about this just a few days ago in a tweet on X, basically what she's doing now is she is coming out and issuing subpoenas to all of the creators who have covered this story. Not all of them yet, but last I saw, it was about 20 or 30 people across TikTok, X, and YouTube. And she basically came out here and attacked all of these creators. She issued subpoenas trying to get their personal information, their personal communications with people. And now, as a result of that, she is pretty much universally hated. Nobody really is on her side anymore. You look at the comments on any of the threads where any of this stuff happens, and at one point, it was maybe 50-50, pro Lively, pro Baldoni. Now it's pretty much 98 against Lively and maybe 2% for her, right? So she has absolutely destroyed her brand at every step of this PR crisis. Something I've talked about often is this is a textbook example of what not to do in a PR crisis. Essentially, everything that she has done has been the wrong path. So a couple of lessons from this experience. The first is that PR is not a brute force strategy. You can't just stick your fingers in your ears and yell, la, 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 I can't hear you, and tell everybody else that they're wrong. What you have to do is, first do the right thing, right? Stop doing shitty things. Stop doing the things that are creating your PR crisis. The second is, while you're doing the right things, you need to then use media to validate that, right? To prove, to show, to create exposure for the fact that you're doing the right thing. So it's not a matter of getting out here and telling everyone they're wrong. It's a matter of showing them that you're right. And she has not done any of that. And then there's a little data point here that for whatever reason, her entire team has either not noticed or completely ignored. And that is, when the people against you, the number of people against you continues to grow, you need to realize that your PR strategy is not working. If more and more and more people think you're a shitty person and you're doing the wrong thing, that's not a sign that everyone else is just stupid. That's a sign that you're wrong and that your PR efforts are not swaying them. They're not showing them whatever you think that it's showing them. So look at that data. When you've got a PR crisis, don't just look at what's going on right now, but look at how it's trending. right? You may still be getting attacked, but maybe it's trending down. That's a good sign. It may not move as fast as you'd like, but it's a good sign. But if you're getting attacked and the number of people who are attacking you continues to grow, you need to stop and look at what you're doing and look at where the flaws are and figure out what you can do to change course, because it's not working, and continuing to do the same thing is not going to work. So, all right. So yeah, that's a wrap on the Blake Lively thing. If that's a topic you guys are interested in, I talk about that a lot on X. So if you're not following me there, definitely make sure that you do. I'm sure there will be more stories coming up. This thing's been going on for, God, I think at least a year. And every time I think that she cannot make it worse, she does. So we'll be talking about her more in the near future, I am certain. But for now, we're going to roll into the next segment, which is how to ace your next remote TV interview like a pro. Now, when it comes to TV interviews, remote TV interviews especially, it's a lot more difficult than people realize, right? It's not a Zoom meeting. You're not sitting there with a couple of coworkers. You are in an environment where you almost kind of feel isolated. You're talking to a camera rather than to another person, which always feels unnatural. And, you know, it's almost kind of like asynchronous, right? Of course, they're going to ask you questions. You're going to answer those questions, but it doesn't feel the same as when you're in studio. So it makes it a lot more difficult. It means you have to really, really be on. You have to be paying attention. You have to be solid. You have to have your talking points nailed down. You have to be calm and confident and all of this. And you're completely isolated while you're doing it. So what we're going to talk about in this segment are some of the things that you can do to really present a polished image when you go on that TV interview and crush it, so that not only does that TV interview now become a valuable asset for you, right? It's a thing you can put on online, you can put on social media, you can put it on your website, you can use it in all of your marketing. Beyond that, it also makes it more likely that you get future media interviews, because if they see that you are good on camera, you can communicate effectively, you can adapt, you can pivot, you communicate clearly, then they're far more likely to bring you on for future interviews. So I've got a few clips we're going to run through on some of the various aspects. And some of these will pay attention to the audio, some of them we won't. In the first one we're going to hit on, this was from a TV segment on Fox News, I don't know, a year or two ago. And this one highlights the importance of really knowing what you're talking about cold, so that you don't have to rely on your notes. So in a studio, you may have some note cards with certain statistics, data, dates, laws, whatever, things like that. And you can look down and glance at them real quick here and there. If you're doing a remote TV interview and you're staring at this camera, right? Like my camera is maybe 2-3 feet away from my face. Any little shift is very obvious. So if I'm going back and forth to my notes, that's going to create some problems. So let's check out this clip and see how this lady did it. And we'll talk about how to avoid that.
Joining us now, billionaire investor David Rubenstein, who is the Carlyle Group's co-founder and co-chairman. Private equity firm has $300 billion in assets under management.
We're going to go ahead and skip forward a bit here. Where are we?
War crimes of the type that
the kombucha,
all right,
health aid company.
So what we're going to see here is as she comes up and she starts talking through her portion of the segment here, you're going to see her eyes darting all over the place. Looks like she's on meth or something here. It just looks very frantic, and it makes her look not very confident. So let's check this out.
What are you seeing on the ground with the disrupted supply chain?
Well, thanks for having me. I've always said I think the most helpful economics degree is agriculture economics, because it is an understanding of the global food supply chain. So Manitree was started to prove out that food could be an asset class with reduced commodity exposure, as well as businesses with sourcing from North America. While we do have an emphasis on improving human health through nutrition.
Now, you guys saw how her eyes are kind of darting all over the place. She's kind of like shaking back and forth like this. Definitely looks very nervous. It was so distracting that they switched to this screen that you see up here. They stayed on that for quite a while she's talking, because you know, it didn't present a good image. So we want to avoid being overly reliant on any notes. We want to avoid having to look back and forth. We want to know whatever data we're going to bring up. We want to know that cold, so we can just keep eye contact with the camera, bring up these stats, bring up this data, the laws, the dates, whatever pieces of data we're bringing into the segment. We want to be able to do that just off the top of our head. And that's really just a simple matter of preparation, right? A few days before the segment, just go over your data, go over your talking points, go over all the information. And then you're not having to go back and forth between your notes and your camera and just creating kind of like a nervous looking impression. All right. The next one we're going to bring up here is controlling your background. So, we're all remote. We don't have the little people on the set that are standing around to make sure nobody walks into the views of the camera at home. So it's really important to make sure that nothing shows up in the background of our interview. So check this one out.
Well, today I think you root with the upside, because you root with the upside, because Citi was an example of poor earnings, but well, today I think you root with the upside, because disaster relative to expectations, more like UNH, which was an excellent quarter.
Watch the background. If I remember correctly, it's going to show up once they blow her up to full screen. But you're going to see somebody walk across the background here in just a second.
Investors, technical analysts, and others just say, okay, summer might be fine. And I see we have another guest that's joining us.
Dogs of the Dow.
And we appreciate that. This is the dog days of summer. People talk about it that way. We were talking about this being
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. We love this. It just adds to the sort of, this is a live show. That's what we enjoy. But help us with this. Where are we now versus where are we in the fall? Because I don't know if it's the conventional wisdom or the prevailing wisdom, but the dogs seem to think that the dog days are going to get a little more exciting, but maybe not in a good way.
All right. So, yeah, her husband walked by in his underwear in the middle of a live national television broadcast. Not a great look. Not the end of the world. Definitely funny. Definitely went viral. But it definitely does not present a great image. So we want to avoid that. We want to take complete control of our environment, make sure that nobody is walking in and out of the area that the camera can see, and we just have that completely locked down. Okay, so another one we're going to talk about.
Let's go back to the biggest news, and that is Tucker Carlson. I don't
think we need his audio. But lighting. So lighting is a tremendously important aspect because, look at this. This dude kind of looks like the devil here. I don't know what this lighting is with. It's supposed to look like some kind of horror movie or something. Doesn't present him in a good light. So you want to make sure that your lighting is good, that it presents you in a flattering light, no pun intended. The way I've got mine set up is, so I've got a monitor straight behind me, and that usually provides a fair amount of light. But then I've got two lights set up on either side at 45-degree angles pointing into me to keep a good, even, balanced light. And I adjust the colors, the brightness, all of that, and get it really dialed in so that you've got a solid, crisp picture here. And it's important to point out that the better your lighting is, the better your overall video quality will be as well. Because when it doesn't have enough light, then it starts to get grainy, it starts to get pixelated, starts to get a little bit blurry. So we want to make sure we've got that light really dialed in. There's a lot of great tutorials for that online. We've actually got a tutorial for that in the PDF guide that we have on crushing your remote TV interview. Breaks that whole thing down in detail, along with, I think 20 or 30 other kind of checklist items. But we want to make sure that the light is solid. We don't want to look like this guy here. He just looks like Lucifer himself. Not a good look. So get your lighting dialed in. All right. So let's see. We are now going to go to phrasing. So we're going to let this one play. There's a little bit of context that leads up to it, but we want to be careful what we're saying and ensure that it can't be interpreted in multiple other ways. some of them potentially negative or embarrassing or something like that. So let's check this one out.
In addition to that, so the winter's not quite done with us on this last winter weekend, and my clicker doesn't want to advance anything. Magic. Is it the leprechaun? I think it is. They're being mischievous. All right, let me try this clicker and see if the leprechaun didn't get that one. Here's your exclusive AccuWeather. Now I'm double-fisted in a different way. For St. Patrick's Day, mild with a shower and 62 for your high. Tomorrow, breezy, mostly sunny skies and 54. Sunday, that's the day wind chills near that freezing mark. 43 for your high, but when you're waking up at 7 a.m., I'm on the air Sunday. Tune in so I'm not alone. Wind chills just in the teens. Monday, a nice start to spring, a high of 53. Upper 50s on Tuesday, looking good, 59. Wednesday, mild, some sunshine, 60. Thursday, partly sunny skies and 57. And to another woman who likes to be double-fisted in a different way, I think, Jess.
She means beer. She means beer. Guys, she means beer. Don't put me on YouTube. My God.
All right. Yeah. So that one was definitely interesting. You don't want to make a slip up like that. The funny thing is I had so many examples of things like that I could have pulled from. That one just kind of cracks me up. But there's a lot of things you can say that could be interpreted the wrong way. And it might be a situation like this where there's a particular meaning to it, or it could be a situation where you use the wrong framing in a particular context. So there was an example of Pete Buttigieg, who was talking at a press conference about one of the train crashes. And, oh man, what the hell was it he said now? I think he had made a statement about a train wreck, right? But not in the context of this train wreck, more of kind of the way that people use it to describe a messed up situation. So, that's another example of saying shit that is going to make you look bad, right? So in his case, it made him look insensitive, or it made him look dumb. Like, why would you say something like that in this situation? So there's a lot of ways that these types of things can go wrong. So we want to really make sure that we've got the phrasing dialed in and we don't use certain things that could be interpreted in other ways than we had intended. All right. So next we're going to talk about maintaining composure. Now, this particular one is actually somebody in the media, not a guest, but the principle still remains. He was kind of blindsided by something that threw him off his game, made him lose his composure. I think it's a hilarious clip. I think you guys will get a hell of a kick out of this.
A Boise, Idaho woman is considered a medical miracle. Laura Esterman was struck by lightning nearly a month ago, and she was considered officially dead. Thankfully, CPR from her mom revived her heart, but she laid in a coma for 2 weeks, and then she defied all odds and woke up. Well, obviously, there was a problem with that tape. She doesn't really sound like that. She doesn't remember the accident, but the evidence is clear. I am so sorry. Laura's learning to walk again after the lightning burned her legs. And we'll have more on that story and hopefully get that tape fixed for you.
All right. I love that one. That one cracks me up every time. So this didn't hurt him per se, but you want to make sure that you've got your composure really dialed in. You're expecting things to go wrong. You're expecting to be blindsided or surprised. And so when you expect that, you're going to be more prepared to handle that. So just be prepared. Maintaining your composure is really important, because if you kind of go off the tracks, then things can go sideways really quickly. And I've actually got a great clip we're going to pull up that kind of shows how things can go badly once you do lose your composure. So this is from a segment where I was on a show that NASDAQ, the stock exchange, hosts. It's a nationally syndicated show, and I was interviewed on a panel. I'm going to pull that up here, and then we'll scrub straight to the part that I'm talking about here. All right, let's see. We need to go to
Welcome to NASDAQ Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technology.
Applicable to where this industry is at the current
Story.
So follow it with
storied and effective way.
There we go. Give you guys a little bit of context here. So there was 3 of us interviewed on this panel, and this particular lady did a very poor job, whether she was unprepared or she got flustered. I don't know exactly what happened, but it went off the rails from literally the first question, and then it just got worse and worse from there. So let's unpack this one.
Storied and effective way.
I advise other women-owned founders that when you're trying to convey a message, to follow it with your heart, and to always give value towards others, and just put yourself in your competitors' shoes.
Well, let me ask this another way, Taylor. What are some of the challenges that you hear when women are trying to develop their message?
Just to and challenges in terms of like, how do I approach this topic without offending others? And how would you put it in a way that is meaningful towards brand expression and even just conveying your zone of genius? And I just advise them that just being yourself and just being honest, and what you're hoping will convey to the public will come across well. So just coming from a good place.
Right. So like anything else in today's day and age, you want it to be authentic and not so.
Kind of reminded me of this.
Recent polls have shown 1/5 of Americans can't locate the U.S. on a world map. Why do you think this is?
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education.
Anyway, so that particular panel, in her case, just kind of got progressively worse as it went on. This is an example of what happens when you lose composure, and now you're kind of scrambling. You're trying to catch up to where you should be, but now you're also worried about what's going to come next. So you're trying to, go forward. You're trying to go backward. You're trying to tie it all together, and you get panicked and you start getting flustered, and then things get worse and worse and worse. What happens when that occurs is, first of all, it ruins that one, right? That media feature is essentially useless because you did not come off professionally. You did not come off articulate. You did not convey any real value. But the other aspect of this is when you botch it like that and a journalist sees that, they are less likely to bring you on to a media feature in the future, because you've already shown that you're not good at it. You're not good on camera. You can't adapt on the fly. You can't kind of roll with the punches. And so this is why it's so important to get everything right, really, to go through and do the prep work, to make sure that you know all of your statistics and your data and your facts and all of the pieces of information that you're going to talk about in this segment. You know it cold. You know it off the top of your head. You're not trying to scramble and look at notes over here or look at a card over here or anything like that. You've just got it, and you're confident, and you deliver it effectively. And that's what separates the people who crush it from the people who get a few opportunities and then just kind of fizzle away. All right, so that's a wrap on the preparing for a remote TV interview. We're going to close out the segment here today. Well, actually, we've got a few questions on social we'll bring up here in a second. But we're going to go ahead and roll into the Jeremy's PR PSA first. And that is that preparation is critical for your TV interview, because if it goes sideways, it will hurt your chances for any future opportunities. So this is why it's so important to just get it right. Go through, put in the work, and way more work than you think you need to put in, right? You need to be able to just adapt to anything on the fly quickly and effectively. And that's something that requires practice, and it's a perishable skill, which means if you don't do it for a while, you will mess up. you will start to get less effective at it. So we want to practice, get really dialed in, make sure that we know the information and that we can communicate effectively on it, regardless of which direction things go, regardless of the order that the questions may come up, or regardless of if they even take it in a completely different direction. So I know we've got a few questions or comments on social media. Chrissy, if you can go ahead and pull those up, please. What you got? All right, so Dr. K is asking, what do I think about media coaching? So that is a great question, Dr. K, and the short answer is I think it's vital. I think it's something that everyone who's going to go get featured in the media needs to do, because it's a very special skill to be able to take a very broad topic and condense it down into concise and effective talking points. Most people don't communicate that way, and because of that, they end up being very verbose. They just keep talking and talking and talking. They don't know how to really get to the point efficiently. And so this is why all of our clients go through media training with us. We walk them through, we do role playing, we throw them curveballs, we do all kinds of things to kind of shake them up and get them really comfortable. But if you're not in a position to hire somebody, you can practice with a friend. You don't have to necessarily go to a publicist, although obviously I recommend doing that because we know what we're doing. We know what the media is looking for. We know how to convey those messages effectively. But if you're not in a position where you can do that, you can always work with a friend. Now, that's not going to be quite as effective as working with a publicist who is trained on this and who understands exactly what the media is looking for. But it is something that we all should do. We all should go through media training. Hell, I sometimes will even do role play for myself if I've got a longer segment coming up. Like I've done some shows where I'm just kind of on the fly talking for 30 minutes at a time on a panel. So in a case like that, I want to kind of polish up a little bit before I go on. 3-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute segment is a piece of cake. You get into the longer ones and you really need to be prepared. And like I said, this is a perishable skill. So the less you do it, the less effective you will be. And that's why I'm so adamant about doing media training regularly, consistently, even if you're getting featured a bunch, right? Let's say you're already out there on TV quite a few times a year. There's still a benefit to doing media training even then. So that's my answer on that. Hope that helps. And thanks for the question. Chris, did we have anybody else or was it just the one from Dr. K? All right. Going once, going twice. All right. So we're going to call that a wrap for today, guys. Thanks for joining us again. Hope you guys found some value in this. Hopefully you apply what you learned here in your own business. And if you did get something out of this, I'd love it if you'd share it with somebody. I'd love it if you drop us a comment. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Thanks, everyone.